Min-jae's hand froze on the iron gate. The child, no more than 3 years old, looked up at him with tears streaming down her dark cheeks, her tiny fingers clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit. His breath caught. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. "Please," the little girl whimpered, her voice breaking. "Mama said, find the man with the dragon." His dragon tattoo. The one that wrapped around his forearm. The one only people who'd been close to him had ever seen in detail. Min-jae's security chief, Tae Yang, stepped forward. "Boss, we should call child services." "No." The word came out strangled. Min-jae crouched down, his 6-foot frame folding carefully. "What's your name?" "Gia," she hiccuped. "Mama's gone. She said you'd remember the cherry blossoms." Everything went silent. The cherry blossoms. The night that changed everything. The woman he'd loved and destroyed in the same breath. "Where is your mother?" His voice cracked despite himself. "Heaven," Gia whispered. "The nice lady said Mama went to heaven 3 days ago." Min-jae's vision blurred. He looked at the child. Really looked. The curve of her jaw, the shape of her nose. His nose. "Oh God," he breathed. "You're mine." Tae Yang's sharp intake of breath confirmed what Min-jae's heart already knew. This child with skin the color of warm mahogany and eyes that held his own soul was his daughter, the daughter he never knew existed. "Sir, if this gets out, the family's the council. They'll use her—" "I know." Min-jae's hands trembled as he reached for Gia. She came to him without hesitation, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "I know what I did to her mother, and I know I can never make it right." But holding this child, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, Min-jae made a choice. The same choice he'd been too much of a coward to make 3 years ago when he'd walked away from the only woman who'd ever made him want to be more than a monster. 3 years ago, the coffee shop near Hongdae University smelled like cinnamon and new beginnings. Min-jae sat in the corner, pretending to read financial reports while his world tilted on its axis. She walked in like she owned the place, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. Amara. Her name tag said Amara, and she had box braids that fell to her waist and a smile that could disarm nuclear weapons. "You've been coming here for 2 weeks," she said, setting down his Americano without him ordering. "Always black coffee, always the corner table, always pretending those numbers on your laptop matter more than they do." Min-jae looked up, genuinely surprised. Observant. Bored. She grinned. "It's a slow Tuesday, and you look like you could use a conversation that doesn't involve whatever makes you frown at spreadsheets like they personally offended your ancestors." He should have shut it down, should have paid and left, should have remembered that people in his world didn't get to have coffee shop meet-cutes with beautiful graduate students who studied international relations and laughed like sunshine, but he didn't. "Min-jae," he said, extending his hand. "Amara." Her hand was warm in his. "And before you ask, yes, I'm American. Yes, I speak Korean. No, I don't find it weird that a 6'2" Korean man with suspiciously expensive watches comes to a college coffee shop instead of some fancy lounge. Suspiciously expensive? That's a Patek Philippe." She raised an eyebrow. "I dated a guy who sold luxury watches once. Lasted 3 weeks before I realized he loved timepieces more than people." Min-jae laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time he'd done that? They talked for 3 hours that day, then 3 hours the next week. Then she gave him her number, and suddenly Min-jae was texting like a teenager, lying to his lieutenants about late-night business meetings that were actually walks along the Han River with a woman who made him forget he had blood on his hands. "What do you do?" she asked one night, 2 months in. They were at his penthouse, not the mansion, somewhere safer, more anonymous. And don't say import-export like every drama villain ever. Min-jae's heart hammered. Would you believe real estate investment? Nope. She popped the P, her eyes dancing. But I also know when not to push. Just promise me it's nothing that'll get you killed. He pulled her close, breathing in her coconut shampoo. "I promise I'll always come back to you." It was the only promise he ever kept. They made love that night, slow and reverent, like they were memorizing each other. Amara traced his dragon tattoo with her fingertips, her lips following the path from his wrist to his shoulder. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "It represents rebirth." He kissed her forehead, "Rising from ashes." "Then rise with me," she said, and God help him, he believed it was possible. For 6 perfect months, Min-jae lived 2 lives. By day, he was the dragon head, ruthless, calculating, feared. By night, he was just Min-jae, the man who brought Amara her favorite talkie and listened to her practice presentations for her thesis defense. Her best friend, Keisha, didn't trust him. "He's hiding something," Keisha said one afternoon. Min-jae heard them from the kitchen where he was supposedly making tea. "Amara, you're too smart for this. Men who are that secretive are protecting me," Amara cut in. "I know you're worried, but I love him, Keish, and I think he loves me too." Min-jae's hand tightened on the kettle. He did love her. Desperately. Dangerously. That's why he knew he had to let her go. The Cheong-san family had found out, not about Amara specifically, but about the distraction. They'd sent a message, a bullet through the window of his penthouse while he was out, if he'd brought Amara that night like she'd asked. Min-jae made his choice in the cold calculation he'd been trained for since childhood. One life for another, her safety for his happiness. He waited until cherry blossom season, her favorite, took her to Uedo Park where pink petals fell like snow. "I love you," he said, memorizing every detail of her face. "I love you too." She was radiant, expectant. She thought he was going to propose. He'd let her think that. "That's why this has to end." Her smile froze. "What?" "Us. This." He forced ice into his voice, channeling every ounce of cruelty he'd ever witnessed. "It was fun, Amara, but it's run its course." "Min-jae, what are you—" "You're a beautiful distraction. That's all you've ever been." Each word was a knife he turned on himself. "Did you really think this was forever? You're a grad student. He gestured vaguely. "We're from different worlds." "You son of a—" Her hand cracked across his face. Good. Anger was better than the devastation he saw pooling in her eyes. "You told me you loved me." "I lied." "Liar!" She shoved him. "Look at me and say it. Say you don't love me." He met her eyes. This was the moment. The kill shot. "I don't love you, Amara. I never did." She stepped back like he'd burned her. "Oh my God." Her hands went to her stomach, a gesture he didn't understand then, but would haunt him later. "I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Irritation leaked through his mask. "Nothing." Tears streamed down her face. "Absolutely nothing. Because you're right. You're nothing to me." She ran. He let her go. Min-jae stood among the falling cherry blossoms and felt something inside him die cleanly. His phone buzzed. Tai Yang. Threat neutralized. She's safe now. Good. She was safe. She could go back to America, finish her degree, meet someone worthy of her light, someone who didn't have a body count and enemies who'd torture her just to get to him. He never saw her again. 3 months later, his informants reported she'd left Korea. He told himself it was for the best, told himself the hollow ache in his chest would fade. It never did. Present day. "Daddy, I'm hungry." The word daddy still felt like a bullet to the chest. Min-jae looked down at Jia, who was sitting at the massive dining table in his mansion, her legs swinging because she was too small for the chair. 2 days. She'd been with him for 2 days, and his entire world had restructured around this tiny human. "What do you want to eat?" he asked, crouching to her level. "Mama used to make mac and cheese." Gia's lower lip trembled. "But she said you might not know how." "I'll learn." The words came out fierce. "I'll learn everything." Tae-yang cleared his throat from the doorway. "Sir, the council has requested a meeting. They've heard rumors." Fuck. Min-jae had known this was coming. You didn't just appear with a secret 3-year-old daughter without questions, especially not in his world where children were leverage and weakness was death. "Tell them I'll be there tonight." He turned back to Jia. "Sweetheart, Mr. Tae-yang is going to stay with you." "No!" She grabbed his shirt. "Don't leave. Everyone leaves." His heart shattered. "I'll come back, I promise." "That's what Mama said." Jia's voice was so small. She promised too. Min-jae pulled her into his arms, this miracle child who was half him and half the woman he'd loved and destroyed. "I'm not going anywhere. The doorbell rang. Strange. No one came to the mansion unannounced. Security was tighter than the Blue House. Tae-young stiffened. His hand went to his concealed weapon. "Boss, we're not expecting—" "I'll get it." Min-jae stood, instincts on high alert. He carried Jia with him, unwilling to let her out of his sight. He opened the door, and his entire world stopped. Keisha stood on his doorstep, older and harder around the edges, her expression a mix of fury and something else. Grief. Fresh grief. "You fucking bastard," she said quietly. "You have her daughter." Min-jae couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Auntie Keisha." Jia squirmed out of his arms and ran to the woman. Keisha scooped her up, her eyes never leaving Min-jae's face. "Do you have any idea what you did to her? What she went through?" He couldn't say it. "Amara is dead." Keisha's voice cracked. "Cancer. Stage 4. By the time they caught it, there was nothing—" She broke off, clutching Jia tighter. "She spent her last 3 years raising your daughter alone because you broke her so completely, she never told you she was pregnant." The world tilted. Min-jae grabbed the door frame to stay upright. "She was pregnant," he whispered. When you told her she meant nothing." "Yeah." Keisha's eyes were merciless. "She was 8 weeks along. Came back to the apartment, threw up from stress, took a test. I was there. I watched her break down because the man she loved had just destroyed her, and now she was carrying his child." "Oh, God." Min-jae's knees buckled. He sank down right there in the doorway. "Oh, God, what did I do?" "You want the list?" Keisha stepped inside, still holding Jia. She went back to the States, worked 3 jobs to put herself through grad school while pregnant, gave birth alone because she was too proud to call her parents, raised Jia in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn while building a career at the UN. She was brilliant, Min-jae, absolutely brilliant and exhausted, always so tired. Each word was a lash. Min-jae took them all. "The headaches started 2 years ago," Keisha continued. "She thought it was stress. By the time she collapsed at work and they did the scans," she pressed her lips together, "glioblastoma, aggressive. They gave her 18 months. She made it 22 out of sheer spite and love for that little girl." Jia was quiet against Keisha's shoulder, her thumb in her mouth. She'd heard this story before. Too many times. "Why didn't she tell me?" Min-jae's voice was raw. "Even dying, why didn't—" "Because you told her she meant nothing." Keisha's shout made Jia flinch. She immediately softened her voice. "Sorry, baby. Sorry." Then back to Min-jae, cold as winter. "You destroyed her belief in you, in herself. It took her a year to even look at another man, and even then, it never went anywhere because she couldn't trust her own judgment anymore. I was protecting her." The excuse sounded pathetic even to his own ears. From what? From me. From this life. Min-jae gestured at the mansion, at Tae-young standing guard with a gun. "I'm the head of the Cheongsan Syndicate. Do you understand what that means? The people who want me dead would have used her, tortured her, killed her slowly just to make me watch." Keisha's expression didn't change. And did she die slowly anyway? The question hung in the air like a blade. "The last 6 months were bad," Keisha said quietly. "Seizures, memory loss, pain that made her scream. But you want to know what she said at the end, when she was so drugged up she barely knew her own name? Min-jae couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face, the first time he'd cried since he was 7 years old. She said, "Tell Min-jae I forgave him. Tell him about the cherry blossoms." Keisha's own eyes were wet. "Even dying, she loved you, and she made me promise to bring Jia here if anything happened to me." "To you? I'm Jia's godmother, legal guardian in Amara's will, but—" Keisha looked away. "I have lupus. It's controlled now, but the stress, the grief. I had a flare-up last week that put me in the hospital. I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't give her the life she deserves, the protection she needs." She set Jia down gently. The little girl immediately ran to Min-jae, wrapping her arms around his neck. "So here's the deal," Keisha said, all business despite the tears. "You get to be her father. But I'm not leaving Korea. I'm staying right here in Seoul, and I'm going to be in her life every single day. You owe Amara that much, letting the people who loved her stay close to her daughter." "Anything," Min-jae managed. "I'll do anything." "Good." Keisha straightened her shoulders. "Because I also brought these." She pulled out a small box from her bag. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, in Amara's handwriting. "She wrote to you," Keisha explained. "Every month for 3 years. Never sent them. But she wanted, if something happened, she wanted you to understand." Min-jae took the box with shaking hands. The top letter was dated the day after he'd broken up with her. "Min-jae, I'm pregnant. I was going to tell you under the cherry blossoms. I had a whole speech planned. Now I'm sitting in my bathroom at 2 a.m., staring at a positive pregnancy test, and I don't know whether to laugh or scream. You said I meant nothing. I'm trying to believe that. I'm trying to hate you. I can't. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know how to fix it, but I know I'm keeping this baby, our baby. I'll love them enough for both of us." Min-jae couldn't read anymore. He pulled Jia closer, burying his face in her hair. "Daddy." Her small hand patted his cheek. "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm sad I didn't meet you sooner," he whispered. "But I'm so happy you're here now." "Mama said you were good," Jia said seriously. "She said you just forgot for a little while." Christ. Even dying, Amara had protected his image to their daughter. Tae-yang stepped forward. "Sir, the council meeting—" "Cancel it." Min-jae stood, still holding Jia. "Or better yet, move it here. They want to meet my daughter? Fine, let them come." "Boss, that's—" "I hid before, protected myself by hurting everyone I loved." His voice hardened. "Never again. Jia is my daughter. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." Keisha raised an eyebrow. "So you're really the head of a crime syndicate?" "The Cheong-san family specializes in protection services and legitimate business holdings," Min-jae said carefully. Then, "Yes, I'm a criminal, the kind you cross the street to avoid." "Huh." Keisha considered this. "Amara always said you had secrets. I'm guessing this is why you pushed her away." "I thought I was saving her life." "You did," Keisha said softly. "Just not the way you planned. She got 3 more years than she would have if she'd stayed in Korea and your enemies found out about her." The thought was cold comfort. "There's one more thing." Keisha pulled out a thumb drive. "Videos. Amara recorded messages for Jia to watch as she grows up. Birthdays, graduations, her wedding day. She recorded for weeks, every moment she was lucid enough." She paused. "There's one for you, too." Min-jae's hand closed around the drive. "I don't deserve—" "No, you don't," Keisha agreed. "But she loved you anyway. So watch it, grieve her, and then be the father she believed you could be." That night, the council meeting went exactly as badly as Min-jae expected. 7 men, old blood, traditional families, sat in his conference room and stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "A child," Elder Park said, his voice dripping with disdain. "An illegitimate child, with a foreigner." "My daughter," Min-jae corrected coldly. Her name is Jia. She's 3 years old, and she's under the protection of the Cheong-san family as of now. The bloodline is mine. Min-jae's voice could have cut glass. Jia carries my blood. That makes her legitimate. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to challenge me directly. Silence. No one was stupid enough to challenge the dragon head in his own territory. Elder Song, the oldest and shrewdest of the council, leaned forward. And the mother? Dead. The word tasted like ash. She died 2 weeks ago. Cancer. Something flickered in Elder Song's eyes. Sympathy, maybe. He'd lost his own wife to illness years ago. The child's safety, Elder Song said slowly, will require significant resources, protection detail, secure schooling, medical care. I'm aware. It will also make you a target. Elder Kim, usually the most moderate voice, spoke up. The Songpa faction has been looking for leverage against you for months. A child, try it. Min-jae's smile was a death threat. Anyone who touches my daughter won't live long enough to regret it. The meeting dissolved into logistics, security protocols, public statements, alliance implications. Min-jae let Tae-yang handle most of it. His mind was upstairs, where Jia was sleeping in a bedroom they'd converted in 12 hours from a guest room to something fit for a princess. When the elders finally left, Elder Song lingered. You loved her, he said. It wasn't a question. The mother. Min-jae nodded once. Then honor that love by protecting what you created together. Elder Song moved to the door, then paused. My grandson is visiting from Busan. His name is Jae Seung. He's studying early childhood education. Perhaps he could help with the transition. I don't need... You need allies, Min-jae, more than ever. Elder Song's eyes were kind. Let an old man's family help. Jae Seung is good with children, and he's discreet about family business. After he left, Tae-young raised an eyebrow. That was unexpected. Elder Song lost his wife when his son was young. He knows, Min-jae's voice roughened, he knows what it's like to raise a child alone. You're not alone, boss. Tae-young clasped his shoulder briefly. Whatever you need. Min-jae nodded, not trusting his voice. Then he went upstairs to where Keisha was sitting in an armchair outside Jia's room, scrolling through her phone. She's asleep, Keisha said quietly. Took an hour. She kept asking if you'd be here in the morning. I will be. Min-jae hesitated. Keisha, I don't. She held up a hand. I'm not here to forgive you, Min-jae. I'm here for Jia, and because Amara asked me to. But we're not friends. We're co-parents to that little girl, and that's it. Understood. Good. She stood, gathering her bag. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. We need to establish a routine, and I want to see where she'll be going to school. I'll arrange it. Keisha started to leave, then turned back. The video, watch it tonight. You'll need to before Jia wakes up asking about her mother again. After she left, Min-jae stood outside Jia's room for a long moment. Through the cracked door, he could see her small form under the covers, the worn stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, his daughter. He finally went to his office, poured 3 fingers of whiskey he didn't drink, and plugged in the thumb drive. Amara's face filled the screen. She looked sick, gaunt, pale, a scarf covering what was probably hair loss. But her eyes were still bright, still determined. Hey, Min-jae. Her voice was raspy but warm. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and Keisha found you. I hope you didn't make this too hard on her. She's been my rock through all of this. She took a shaky breath. I'm not going to yell at you. I don't have the energy, and honestly, I used up all my anger in year 1. By year 2, with Jia learning to walk, I started to understand. She smiled sadly. You were protecting me, weren't you? Something happened. Something scared you enough to push me away. Min-jae's hands tightened on the desk. I'm not saying I forgive you for how you did it. That speech under the cherry blossoms, that was cruel, Min-jae. I had nightmares about it for months. Her eyes glistened, But I know you, the real you, the man who brought me street food at midnight and listened to me rant about international policy for hours. That man loved me. I know he did." "I did," Min-jae whispered to the screen. "I do. So here's what I need you to know. Jia is the best thing I've ever done. She's smart and funny and stubborn as hell. Gets that from both of us." Amara laughed, then coughed. When she recovered, her expression was serious. "She's going to have questions about me, about you, about why we weren't together. Tell her the truth. Not all of it. She's a kid. But enough. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I loved you." Tears streamed down Min-jae's face. "And Min-jae?" Amara leaned closer to the camera. "Live. Please God, live. Don't let guilt eat you alive. Don't shut yourself off from the world because of me. Jia needs a father who's present, who's alive. She needs—" The video glitched. When it cleared, Amara was crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're going to have to do this without me. We should have had more time. We should have—" She wiped her eyes angrily. Damn it. This wasn't supposed to be about regrets. She collected herself with visible effort. "There's a box in Jia's things. Photo albums. I documented everything. Her first smile, first steps, first words. I wanted you to have that. To see what you missed, yes, but also to see how much she's already a miracle." Amara's hand went to her chest, over her heart. "I release you, Min-jae, from whatever guilt or obligation you feel. I release you. Now step up and be the father our daughter deserves. Be the man I fell in love with, the one who believed in rising from ashes." The screen went dark. Min-jae sat in the darkness of his office and wept, great gasping sobs that shook his entire body. For Amara, who'd loved him past logic. For Jia, who'd never know her mother's laugh. For himself, who'd let fear turn him into the villain of his own story. When he finally pulled himself together, dawn was breaking outside. He went upstairs, showered, changed into clean clothes. By the time Jia's door opened at 7:30 a.m., Min-jae was sitting in the hallway waiting. "Daddy?" She rubbed her eyes sleepily. "You're here." "I'm here." He scooped her up. "Forever, I promise." This time, he meant it. 2 weeks later, Elder Song's grandson turned out to be a godsend. Jae-sung was 26, had a smile that could melt glaciers, and an infinite patience with 3-year-olds that Min-jae envied. He arrived the following Monday with a bag full of art supplies and an early childhood education degree from Seoul National University. "So," Jae-sung said, watching Jia color at the dining table, "your daughter is brilliant, you're a crime boss, and you need help figuring out preschool enrollment. Do I have that right?" Min-jae blinked. "Your grandfather told you that you're the head of Cheongsan?" "Yeah." Jae-sung shrugged. "My family's been in the life for 4 generations. I'm the black sheep who went legitimate, but I'm not naive." He smiled. "Also, I'm gay, which the elders pretend not to know, so we both have secrets." Despite everything, Min-jae laughed. Jae-sung proved invaluable. He knew every private preschool in Seoul, which ones asked questions, and which ones valued discretion. He taught Min-jae the basics of toddler care, what 3-year-olds should eat, how much sleep they needed, the signs of emotional distress. "She's processing trauma," Jae-sung explained one afternoon while Jia napped. "Losing her mother, being brought to a foreign country, meeting a father she's only heard about in stories. That's a lot for an adult, let alone a toddler." "How do I help her?" "Consistency, routine, affection." Jae-sung ticked them off. "And therapy eventually, but mostly just be present. You're doing better than you think." Keisha came every day as promised. She and Jae-sung hit it off immediately. "You're the godmother?" Jae-sung asked on their first meeting. "And you're the crime family grandson turned kindergarten teacher," Keisha shot back. "Early childhood education specialist, but close enough." They grinned at each other. Min-jae watched something spark between them. Recognition, maybe. Two people orbiting the same strange situation. By week 2, they were getting coffee together after Jia's afternoon activities. By week 3, Jae-sung was blushing when Keisha texted. "You like her," Min-jae observed one evening. Jae-sung nearly dropped the book he was reading. "What? No, I mean, she's great, but you're gay." "Bi," Jae-sung corrected quietly. "But yes, generally prefer men, except apparently when a gorgeous, whip-smart woman who doesn't take anyone's crap enters my life and just—" He made an exploding gesture. Min-jae's lips twitched. "Did you tell her? That I'm bi? Yes? That I'm falling for her? Absolutely not." Jae-sung looked panicked. "She's grieving her best friend. She's dealing with a lupus flare-up. The last thing she needs is me dumping feelings on her." "Maybe it's exactly what she needs," Min-jae said softly. "Someone who sees her, not just the grief or the illness, but her." Jae-sung stared at him. "That's surprisingly insightful for a crime boss." "I learned from mistakes." Min-jae's voice roughened. "Don't make mine. If you love her, tell her." 1 month later, the threat came on a Tuesday. Min-jae was reviewing contracts when Tae-young burst into his office, face grim. "Songpa faction," he said shortly. "They grabbed Keisha outside Jia's school." Everything stopped. "Where's Jia?" "Safe, still in the classroom with Jae-sung, but they left a message." Tae-yang handed over a phone. "They want a meeting, you alone, in exchange for Keisha's safe return." "It's a trap." "Obviously." Min-jae was already moving. "Get Jia and Jae-sung to the safe house, triple the security detail, and call Elder Song. I need the full council's backing on this. Boss, if you go—" "They took someone under my protection." Min-jae's voice was lethal. "I don't negotiate with that." The meeting location was an abandoned warehouse in Incheon. Classic. Min-jae went armed, 3 guns, 2 knives, and Tae-yang's team positioned on every exit despite his orders to go alone. Keisha was tied to a chair in the center of the warehouse, blood trickling from her temple. 5 Songpa soldiers surrounded her. Their lieutenant, a smug bastard named Han Seo, smiled. "Dragonhead. So nice of you to join us." "Let her go." Min-jae's gun was already drawn. "She's civilian, not part of this world. But she's connected to you. That makes her fair game." Hanseo circled Keisha. "We know about the daughter, the American brat. We know you've gone soft." "Last warning." Min-jae cocked the gun. "Release her." "Or what? You'll start a war over one woman?" Hanseo laughed. "You've already proven you'll throw away women who matter to you. What makes this one special?" "This one," Keisha said clearly despite her injuries, "has backup." The warehouse exploded into chaos. Tae-yang's team breached simultaneously from 3 points. Min-jae shot Hanseo in the shoulder before he could reach Keisha. The Songpa soldiers scattered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. It was over in 4 minutes. Min-jae cut Keisha's bonds personally. "Can you walk?" "I can run if needed." She was shaking but steady. "Thank you." "You're under Cheongsan protection. That means something." He helped her up. "Always." In the car back to Seoul, Keisha finally broke down. I thought they'd kill me before you got there." She was crying now, great heaving sobs, and all I could think was Jia would lose me too, and Jae-sung, I never told him. "Told him what?" Min-jae kept his voice gentle. "That I love him." The words tumbled out. "It's been a month and I love him, and I was too scared to say it because what if the lupus gets worse? What if I can't give him the life he deserves? What if—" "Keisha." Min-jae handed her his handkerchief. "What if you do? What if you have years together? What if love is worth the risk?" She stared at him. "When did you become a romantic?" "When I realized I wasted the only chance I had." His throat tightened. "Don't waste yours." They arrived back at the mansion to find Jae-sung pacing outside like a caged animal. The moment Keisha stepped out of the car, he was there. "Oh, thank God." He pulled her into his arms, shaking. They said you were grabbed, and I couldn't. Keisha, I couldn't breathe. I'm okay, she whispered. I'm here. I love you. Jae-sung pulled back to look at her. I know it's fast and terrible timing and you're going through hell, but I love you. I need you to know that. If something had happened and I'd never said it... Keisha kissed him, just grabbed his face and kissed him like he was oxygen. When they broke apart, both were crying. I love you too, Keisha said, and I'm terrified, but I'm so tired of being scared of everything. Then be scared with me. Jae-sung touched his forehead to hers. We'll figure it out together. Min-jae turned away, giving them privacy. Inside the mansion, Jia was curled up on the couch with Tae Yang reading her a story. She looked up when Min-jae entered. Daddy, she ran to him. Auntie Keisha? Is safe. She'll be here soon. He picked her up. Everyone's safe. You promised. Jia's small hand patted his cheek. You keep promises. Always, Min-jae vowed. I learned from the best. That night, after Jia was asleep, Min-jae pulled out Amara's letters again. He'd been reading them chronologically, one per night, savoring and torturing himself in equal measure. Tonight's was from Jia's first birthday. Min-jae, she walked today. 11 months old, and she just stood up and walked straight to me, like it was nothing. I cried. Keisha cried. We ate an entire cake between the two of us in celebration. I wish you could have seen it. I wish... No more wishes. That way lies madness. But I will tell you this. She has your determination, your stubborn refusal to accept limitations. When she wants something, she doesn't give up. She'll make such a mark on the world someday. I hope you get to see it. I hope you know her. I hope you love her the way I do, fiercely, completely, without reservation. Min-jae pressed the letter to his chest. I do, he whispered to the ghost of the woman he'd loved. I promise, Amara. I love her, and I'll make sure she knows she comes from love, on both sides. 3 months later, Jia started preschool at Seoul International Academy, a private institution used to dealing with high-profile families who valued discretion. She thrived. She's very social, her teacher, Ms. Park, reported during the first parent-teacher conference, and her Korean is improving rapidly. She switches between English and Korean mid-sentence, which is developmentally perfect for her age. Min-jae sat in the tiny chair designed for 4-year-olds, feeling absurd and proud in equal measure. She's happy? Very. Ms. Park smiled. She talks about you constantly. My daddy this and my daddy that. You're doing wonderfully. He left the school feeling lighter than he had in years. In the parking lot, he found Keisha and Jae-sung waiting by his car. Ambush? He asked mildly. Invitation, Jae-sung corrected. He was holding Keisha's hand and both looked nervous. We wanted to tell you first before Jia. Tell me what? Keisha held up her left hand. A modest but beautiful diamond caught the light. We're engaged, she said, smiling and crying simultaneously. I know it's fast, but... Min-jae pulled them both into a hug. It's perfect. Congratulations. You're not upset? Jae-sung asked. I know things have been... I'm happy. Min-jae meant it. Amara would be happy. She'd want you to have love and joy and every good thing. Keisha's face crumpled. I miss her so much. I know. Min-jae squeezed her shoulder. But she's here, in Jia, in the way you love her, in the family we're building. She's here. They told Jia that evening over dinner. She was delighted. Auntie Keisha and Uncle Jae-sung are getting married? She bounced in her seat. Can I be a princess? You can be the flower girl, Keisha promised. You'll wear a beautiful dress and throw petals. Like Mama's cherry blossoms. Jia clapped. She told me about those. She said they were magic. The 3 adults exchanged glances. Your mama was right, Min-jae said softly. They were magic. They are magic. The wedding was planned for spring, cherry blossom season. Of course it was. 6 months later, the wedding. Uido Park was transformed into something from a fairy tale. White chairs lined the pathways, cherry blossom petals falling like snow. Keisha wore a dress the color of champagne, her natural curls crowned with flowers. Jae-sung looked like he might cry from joy. Jia, dressed in pink and wielding her basket of petals with serious concentration, walked down the aisle like she owned it. Minji sat in the front row, watching his daughter and thinking about Amara. If he closed his eyes, he could almost feel her presence in the warm spring breeze, in the scent of cherry blossoms, in the love that saturated the air. Thank you, he thought, for her, for all of this. The ceremony was beautiful. Keisha and Jae-sung wrote their own vows. I was lost in grief, Keisha said, her voice clear despite her tears. You found me in the darkness and reminded me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to fight for. You taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, Jae-sung replied. It's loving anyway, choosing anyway, being brave enough to say, I choose you every single day. I choose you, they said together. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. At the reception, Jia appointed herself the official flower girl supervisor and dance floor manager. She dragged Min-jae up to dance 3 times. You're happy, Daddy, she observed during a slow song. He was holding her small arms around his neck. I am, he realized. Are you? Yes. She smiled. Mama said you'd be good at being a daddy once you remembered how. Min-jae's chest tightened. What else did Mama say? That you loved her very much, and that you loved me even before you met me. Jia cocked her head. Is that true? Yes. He kissed her forehead. I loved you the moment I learned you existed, and I love you more every single day. Good. She snuggled into his shoulder. 'Cause I love you too, so much. Elder Song found him later, watching the newlyweds dance. You've done well, the old man said. Better than well. You've built something real. I had help. Min-jae nodded toward where Tae-yang was attempting to teach Jia some kind of elaborate handshake. A lot of help. That's what family does. Elder Song paused. The council voted. Unanimously. Jia is recognized as your heir. When the time comes, she'll have every right and protection the Cheong-san family can offer. Min-jae nodded, throat tight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Earn it. Elder Song's eyes were sharp. Raise her right. Teach her strength and compassion. Make sure she knows she comes from love. I will. It was a vow, as binding as any marriage ceremony. As the evening wound down, Min-jae found himself standing under a cherry blossom tree, with Jia asleep on his shoulder. Keisha and Jae-sung were saying goodbye to guests, glowing with happiness. Tae-yang approached quietly. Boss, we should get Jia home. In a minute. Min-jae breathed in the spring air, the scent of flowers, the sound of laughter. I want to remember this. It's a good memory, Tae-yang agreed. You have a lot of those now. He did. Against all odds, against everything he'd done or failed to do, Min-jae had this. A daughter who loved him, friends who'd become family, and the ghost of a love that had redeemed him. On the way home, Jia stirred. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. Can we come back here? To see the blossoms? Every year, Min-jae promised, every spring we'll come here and remember. Remember Mama? And how much she loved us both. He adjusted her in his arms. And how much we love each other. Jia smiled sleepily. That's a lot of love. Yes, Min-jae agreed, his heart full for the first time in years. Yes, it is. 1 year later, the cherry blossoms were in full bloom again. Min-jae stood under the same tree where he'd broken Amara's heart 5 years ago, where he'd attended Keisha and Jae-sung's wedding 1 year ago, where he'd brought Jia every spring since she'd arrived in his life. Jia was 4 now, chattering away in rapid-fire Korean and English about her preschool friends and the paintings she'd made. Keisha was 6 months pregnant, glowing and happy. Jae-sung hovered like she might break, which she found both annoying and endearing. You're being ridiculous, Keisha said fondly. I'm pregnant, not made of glass. You're growing my child, Jae-sung countered. You're literally performing a miracle. I'm allowed to hover. Our child, Keisha corrected, smiling. Min-jae watched them and felt that familiar ache, not for what he'd lost, but for what Amara had missed. She should be here, seeing her best friend happy and loved. She should be meeting her daughter's friends, arguing with him about bedtimes and sugar intake, planning Jia's 5th birthday party. You okay? Taeyang appeared at his elbow. The security chief had become something between a friend and a brother over the past 2 years. Yeah. Min-jae meant it. Just thinking. About her? Always. He watched Jia try to catch falling petals, but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Now it's just grateful for the time we had, for what we created together. She'd be proud of you, Taeyang said quietly. What you've built, who you've become. I hope so. Jia ran over, petals in her hair. Daddy, look, I caught 15. That's amazing. He scooped her up. What should we do with them? Save them. She was very serious. For Mama's memory box. Min-jae's heart clenched. They'd created a memory box together. Photos, letters, small mementos. Jia added to it regularly, her way of processing the mother she barely remembered but loved deeply. That's a perfect idea. They stayed until sunset, the 5 of them, 6 counting the baby, surrounded by falling petals and spring warmth. Elder Song joined them toward the end, bringing traditional rice cakes and his quiet, steadying presence. To new beginnings, Elder Song said, raising a small cup of majiali. To family, Keisha added, leaning into Jae-sung. To love, Jae-sung said, kissing her temple. To promises kept, Taeyang offered, nodding at Min-jae. Min-jae looked at Jia, at the family they'd built from grief and love and sheer stubborn determination. He thought of Amara, who'd forgiven him from beyond the grave and given him the greatest gift of his life. To cherry blossoms, he said softly, and the magic they bring. Magic, Jia echoed, throwing her petals in the air. They fell like snow, like blessings, like hope. And Min-jae, former crime boss, broken man, redeemed father, finally believed in new beginnings.